Captain Yoon Tai-ho stared at the endless black space through his ship's main window and felt the weight of 30 years pressing down on his shoulders like a heavy blanket. His patrol vessel moved slowly through the outer edges of human space, where nothing interesting ever happened, and that was exactly how the Galactic Coalition wanted it to be. They had pushed humanity into this corner of the galaxy like unwanted children sent to their room after breaking something valuable. The bridge around him was quiet except for the soft hum of life support systems and the occasional beep from the navigation computer. His crew of 12 worked at their stations with the kind of bored efficiency that came from months of finding absolutely nothing during their patrols. They were good people, but they had been stuck out here just like him because someone higher up decided they were not worth keeping in the real Navy anymore. Tai-ho remembered when first contact had happened 30 years ago and how excited everyone on Earth had been to learn they were not alone in the universe. The Coalition had seemed friendly at first with their promises of trade and shared knowledge and a place for humanity among the stars. Then came the Proxima Centauri incident, and everything changed overnight. The Coalition claimed that human ships had attacked their peaceful research station and killed thousands of innocent alien scientists who were just trying to study a new planet. The evidence seemed clear, and humanity found itself branded as a warlike species that could not be trusted. The sanctions had started small at first, but grew worse each year. Human ships were banned from most Coalition space and trade agreements, were canceled one after another. Earth's colonies struggled without the advanced technology they had been promised, and many people began to wonder if joining the galactic community had been a terrible mistake. Tai-ho himself had been a promising young officer in Earth's Space Navy until the incident destroyed his career, along with so many others. Now he commanded a small patrol ship that was more like a prison than a military vessel. His communications officer looked up from her console with the first expression of interest Tai-ho had seen from her in weeks. "Captain, we are getting a distress signal from the neutral zone about 2 hours away at maximum speed," she said while adjusting her headset to get a clearer signal. "It sounds like a Coalition vessel, but the transmission is very weak and keeps cutting out." Tai-ho felt his heart rate increase slightly, because anything that broke the monotony of their endless patrols was worth investigating even if it meant potential trouble with their superiors. "Can you make out what kind of ship it is or what happened to them?" he asked, while moving closer to look at the data on her screen. The officer shook her head and frowned at the static-filled transmission. "The signal is too broken up to understand much, but it definitely sounds like they need help and there are no other ships in the area that could reach them in time," she replied, while trying different frequencies to clean up the message. Standard procedure said that human ships should avoid contact with Coalition vessels unless specifically ordered to assist them, but Tai-ho had never been one to follow rules when people might be dying. He had joined the Space Navy to help others and protect innocent lives, and that principle had not changed even after his career had been destroyed by politics and fear. "Set course for their position and increase speed to maximum," he ordered, while settling into his captain's chair. "Send a message letting them know we are coming to help." His first officer looked concerned and moved closer to speak quietly. "Sir, the regulations are pretty clear about unauthorized contact with Coalition ships, and if Command finds out we could all face serious consequences," he said, while glancing nervously at the other crew members who had stopped their work to listen. Tai-ho understood the man's concerns because they were all valid, and the punishment for disobeying direct orders could be severe. But he also knew that he would not be able to live with himself if he ignored people who needed help, just to avoid getting in trouble with bureaucrats who had never risked their lives for anyone. "I will take full responsibility for this decision," he said firmly. "If anyone wants to file a complaint about my orders, they can do it after we save whoever is on that ship." The journey to the distress signal took exactly 2 hours and 17 minutes, during which time the crew prepared their rescue equipment and tried to establish better communication with the damaged vessel. As they got closer, the signal became clearer, but also more disturbing, because there had been no response to any of their attempts to talk to the crew. The ship appeared on their sensors as a medium-sized Coalition research vessel that was drifting without power and showing no signs of life support activity. When they finally arrived at the coordinates, Tae-ho could see the coalition ship through the main window, and it looked wrong in ways that made his stomach feel tight with worry. The hull showed no obvious damage from weapons or collisions, but all the lights were off, and it was spinning slowly like a piece of space debris. No rescue. Pods had been launched, and there were no signs that anyone had tried to escape before whatever happened to disable their systems. Life signs. Tae-ho asked his science officer, who was running deep scans of the alien vessel. The woman looked puzzled as she checked her instruments several times before answering. I am reading 17 life forms aboard the ship, but the biosignatures are very weak and not responding to our hails, she said while adjusting the sensors to get more detailed information. It almost looks like they are unconscious or in some kind of suspended animation. Tae-ho made the decision that would change everything. Prepare a boarding party of 4 people, including myself and Dr. Park So-jin from our medical team, he ordered while standing up from his chair. If those people are hurt, they need help, and we are the only ones who can provide it. So-jin was a quiet woman in her 30s who had joined their ship 6 months ago after her research on alien biology had been deemed too controversial by the scientific community on Earth. She had spent years studying coalition species and had published papers suggesting that their official reports about various incidents might not be completely accurate. Her theories had been dismissed by most academics, but Tae-ho respected her intelligence and dedication to finding the truth. The boarding party suited up in full environmental gear and crossed the short distance between ships using magnetic tethers. The coalition vessel's airlock opened easily, which suggested that their computer systems were still working, even though everything else seemed to be offline. As soon as they stepped inside, Tae-ho knew something was very wrong, because the air smelled of death and decay, in a way that made him want to cover his nose. They found the first body in the main corridor, and So-jin immediately began examining it with her medical scanner. The alien was from a species called the Veltar, and appeared to have died recently, but something about the scene did not match what Tae-ho would have expected from a ship in distress. The body showed no signs of injury or struggle and was positioned as if the creature had simply fallen asleep while walking. This is strange, So-jin said quietly while taking readings with her equipment. The cellular decay suggests this individual has been dead for at least 3 months, but their ship's log shows they sent a distress signal just 2 days ago. She looked up at Tae-ho with confusion in her eyes. That should be impossible unless someone else has been operating their systems. They found 16 more bodies throughout the ship, and every single one told the same impossible story. The crew had been dead for months, but their ship had been active and sending messages until very recently. Even more disturbing was So-jin's discovery that all the aliens showed signs of internal damage that looked like poisoning rather than any kind of accident or system failure. As they prepared to leave the dead ship, Tae-ho realized that everything he thought he knew about the galaxy might be wrong, and that humanity's 30 years of isolation and punishment might be based on lies that someone very powerful wanted to keep hidden. The journey back to their patrol ship felt different to Tae-ho as he and his boarding party carried the evidence they had collected from the dead coalition vessel. So-jin had taken tissue samples and recorded detailed scans of the alien bodies, while their engineer Lee Hyo-jin had copied the ship's computer logs and navigation data. Every piece of information they gathered painted a picture that made no sense according to everything the galaxy believed about recent events. Once they were safely back aboard their own ship, Tae-ho called his senior officers to the main conference room where So-jin spread out her findings on the central display screen. The medical data showed clear signs that all 17 crew members had been poisoned with a substance that attacked their nervous systems over several weeks, before finally killing them. But the ship's logs indicated they had been alive and actively working until just 48 hours ago. Someone has been controlling that ship remotely, Hyo-jin said while pointing to the navigation records she had recovered from the coalition vessel's computer. The flight path shows it came from the Kepler 442 system, which is supposed to be completely empty according to all official star charts. She paused to highlight several course corrections that had been made after the crew was already dead. These maneuvers were performed by someone who knew exactly where they wanted the ship to end up. Lieutenant Nam Dong-woo was the youngest member of their senior staff and had lost both parents when coalition forces had bombed a human colony in retaliation for the Proxima Centauri incident. His hatred for the aliens who had destroyed his family was something he tried to hide, but Tae-ho could see it burning behind his eyes whenever they discussed coalition politics. Maybe this is some kind of trap, Dongwoo said suspiciously. They could be trying to lure us into investigating something that will get us blamed for even more attacks. Tae-ho understood the young man's paranoia because 30 years of being treated like criminals had made most humans suspicious of anything involving the coalition. But his instincts told him that they had stumbled onto something much bigger than a simple trap, and that ignoring it would be a mistake they might regret forever. We need to find out what happened in the Kepler 442 system, he decided. If someone is manipulating ships and creating fake evidence, then the galaxy deserves to know the truth. The trip to Kepler 442 took 5 days, during which time Sojin continued analyzing the tissue samples, while Hyojin worked on decrypting more files from the coalition ship's database. What they found was disturbing evidence that the dead vessel had not been alone, and that whatever had killed its crew was part of a much larger operation. Hidden in the navigation logs were coordinates for several other locations where similar incidents had supposedly occurred. When they finally arrived at the Kepler 442 system, Tae-ho was shocked to find that it was far from empty as the official records claimed. Floating in space around the fourth planet were the remains of what looked like a massive battle, involving dozens of ships from at least 3 different factions. Debris fields stretched for thousands of kilometers and included wreckage from coalition vessels, unknown alien craft, and what appeared to be human ships. "My God," whispered their communications officer as she stared at the destruction displayed on the main screen. "How many people died here, and why does nobody know about it?" Hyojin was already running detailed scans of the debris to determine how long the battle had taken place and what kinds of weapons had been used. Her preliminary results showed that the fight had happened approximately 4 months ago and involved energy weapons, kinetic projectiles, and some kind of automated defense system that had targeted all 3 groups equally. The human ships show signs of being destroyed by coalition weapons, she reported, but the coalition vessels were attacked by something else entirely. Tae-ho ordered his crew to begin collecting samples of the wreckage, while he and Sojin took a shuttle to examine some of the larger pieces more closely. What they found aboard, the remains of a human destroyer, made his blood run cold because the ship showed clear evidence of having been planted at the battle site after it had been destroyed somewhere else. Scorch marks from weapons fire did not match the damage patterns on nearby coalition ships, and the crew compartments had been stripped of bodies and personal effects. This ship was brought here to make it look like humans were involved in whatever happened, Sojin said while examining blast patterns on the hull that did not match any known human or coalition weapons. Someone wanted investigators to find evidence that our people were responsible for attacking these aliens. As they continued exploring the debris field, they discovered something even more disturbing in the form of automated defense platforms that had been hidden among the asteroids surrounding the battle site. The weapons were clearly of alien origin, but did not match any technology known to belong to either humans or the coalition. They appeared to have been programmed to attack any ship that entered the system regardless of its origin or intentions. Hyojin's analysis of the defense platforms revealed that they used a form of adaptive artificial intelligence that could learn from each encounter and modify its tactics accordingly. "These things have been here for years," she reported. "The programming shows evidence of hundreds of engagements with different types of vessels, and the AI has been constantly updating its combat algorithms." The most shocking discovery came when Sojin found biological samples in the wreckage that belonged to a species she had never seen before. The DNA structure was unlike anything in coalition databases, and showed signs of advanced genetic modification that suggested a level of biotechnology far beyond what any known civilization possessed. "These aliens can change their cellular structure at will," she explained while showing Tae-ho the test results. "They could theoretically alter their appearance to mimic any other species, including humans." As they prepared to leave the Kepler 442 system, Tae-ho realized that they had uncovered evidence of a conspiracy that went far deeper than anyone had imagined. Someone had been manipulating events across the galaxy and using shape-shifting aliens to impersonate different species during attacks that were then blamed on innocent civilizations. The implications were staggering because it meant that humanity's 30 years of isolation and punishment had been based on completely fabricated evidence. The journey back toward human space was tense as the crew processed what they had learned and tried to understand how such a massive deception could have been maintained for so long. Ambassador Kim Jae-won on Earth needed to know what they had discovered, but communicating across interstellar distances would take time, and there was no guarantee that their messages would not be intercepted by Coalition intelligence services. "We need to be very careful about how we handle this information," Taeho warned his officers during their final briefing. "If the people responsible for this conspiracy realize that we know the truth, they will do everything possible to silence us before we can expose them." Sojin had been unusually quiet since their return from the debris field, but now she looked up with determination in her eyes. "Captain, I have been thinking about the biological samples we collected, and I believe I know what species we are dealing with," she said. "There are references in ancient Coalition archives to a race called the Vashati, who were supposedly extinct, but possessed exactly the kind of shape-shifting abilities we observed." The name meant nothing to Taeho, but he could see that Sojin believed it was important. "What happened to them?" he asked. "According to official records, their homeworld was destroyed in a mining accident about 50 years ago," Sojin replied. "But now I am wondering if that accident was actually genocide, and if some of them survived to seek revenge against the Coalition by framing other species for crimes they did not commit." As their ship headed back toward the outer edges of human space, Taeho knew that they were carrying information that could change the balance of power in the galaxy. But he also knew that powerful people would kill to keep their secrets hidden, and that his small crew might be the only thing standing between humanity and a war based on lies that had been carefully constructed over decades of deception. The encrypted data files that Hyojin had recovered from the Coalition ship led them to coordinates for a rogue planet drifting in the empty space between star systems. The world had no sun to orbit and existed in permanent darkness, lit only by the faint heat bleeding from its molten core. According to the navigation records, it was the last place the dead crew had visited before their ship began its journey to where Taeho had found them. As their patrol vessel approached the dark world, Taeho could see artificial structures on the surface that glowed with the cold light of emergency power systems. Someone had built a research facility on this frozen wasteland and then abandoned it recently enough that some of the equipment was still running. The energy signatures matched Coalition technology, but the base did not appear on any official records that Hyojin could access. "Why would anyone build a research station on a planet like this?" Dongwoo asked while staring at the bleak surface through the main display screen. "There are no resources here and no strategic value that would justify the cost of maintaining a facility in such a remote location." Sojin had been studying the energy readings and atmospheric data since they had arrived, and her expression was troubled. "The perfect place to conduct experiments that you do not want anyone to discover," she said quietly. "A world with no native life and no reason for anyone to visit accidentally." Taeho made the decision to land near the research facility, even though every instinct told him they were walking into danger. The base was clearly designed to study living subjects based on the biosignatures their scanners detected, and he needed to know what kind of research had been conducted there. If the Coalition had been performing illegal experiments, it might explain why someone was seeking revenge against them. The facility's main airlock opened automatically when they approached, which suggested that whoever had been working there had left in a hurry without properly securing the base. Inside, the corridors were lined with empty laboratory chambers and computer terminals that still displayed data from experiments that had been terminated only weeks earlier. The air recycling systems were still running, but the place felt dead in a way that made everyone nervous. They found Dr. Choi Min-ho in the facility's central laboratory, sitting at a computer terminal and staring at data files with the hollow expression of someone whose entire worldview had been destroyed. He was human, which came as a shock because Earth's scientific community had been banned from participating in most Coalition research projects since the Proxima Centauri incident. When he saw Taeho and his team enter the lab, he did not seem surprised or afraid. "I have been waiting for someone to find this place," Min-ho said without looking away from his computer screen. "I kept telling myself that what we were doing here was for the greater good of galactic civilization, but I knew it was wrong from the very beginning." Tae-ho approached the scientist carefully because the man seemed to be on the edge of a complete mental breakdown. "What kind of research were you conducting here?" he asked while gesturing for his team to spread out and examine the laboratory equipment. Minho finally turned away from his computer, and Tae-ho could see tears in his eyes as he began to explain the horrific truth about the facility. "We were experimenting on survivors of a species called the Vashiti, who were supposed to be extinct," he said. "The coalition told us they had found a few individuals who had escaped the destruction of their homeworld, and that studying their unique biology could lead to medical breakthroughs that would benefit everyone." So Jin immediately began examining the laboratory equipment and found evidence of genetic modification experiments that had been performed on living subjects over a period of several years. The data files showed that coalition scientists had been trying to weaponize the Vashati's natural shapeshifting abilities by enhancing their cellular restructuring capabilities and teaching them to perfectly mimic other species, including humans. The Vashti can naturally alter their appearance, but the process is normally slow and limited. Minho continued while showing them video recordings of the experiments. "We developed techniques to accelerate their transformation abilities and expand their range so they could impersonate any species in the galaxy with perfect accuracy." The video files were disturbing to watch because they showed intelligent beings being treated like laboratory animals while coalition scientists performed painful procedures designed to enhance their abilities. The Vashiti subjects appeared to understand what was being done to them, and several recordings captured them, attempting to communicate with their captors in broken coalition language. Hyojin discovered that the facility had been connected to a secret communication network that allowed it to coordinate with similar research stations across coalition space. There were at least 12 other bases conducting similar experiments, she reported while downloading files from the main computer system. The project was codenamed Operation Mirror, and it had been running for over 20 years. The most damning evidence came from Dr. Minho's personal files, which contained detailed records of how the enhanced Vashiti had been deployed to carry out false flag attacks against various species throughout the galaxy. The shapeshifters had been programmed with artificial memories and sent to impersonate humans, Talnari, Zerion, and other races while committing atrocities that were then blamed on the species they had been disguised as. The Proxima Centauri incident was completely fabricated, Minho admitted while showing them security footage of Vashati operatives being prepared for a mission 30 years earlier. "We created fake human ships and sent our subjects to destroy the research station while disguised as your people." He paused to wipe tears from his face before continuing. "Thousands of innocent coalition scientists died, so that humanity could be branded as warlike and pushed to the edges of galactic civilization." Tae-ho felt rage building inside him as he realized that his entire career and the suffering of billions of humans had been based on a lie designed to serve someone else's political agenda. "Why would the coalition want to frame humanity for crimes we did not commit?" he demanded. Minho explained that humanity's rapid technological advancement and military potential had made coalition leadership nervous about allowing them to become full members of galactic civilization. "Your species learns too quickly and adapts too well," he said. "The ruling council decided it would be safer to isolate you before you became a threat to their power structure." But the most shocking revelation came when Minho showed them recent surveillance footage from the facility's security cameras. One of the Vashiti subjects had escaped during the evacuation and was now operating independently with enhanced abilities and access to coalition technology. The creature called itself Cassandra and had been responsible for many of the recent attacks that had been blamed on human colonies. "She is not following our programming anymore," Minho warned them. "Cassandra has her own agenda, and she blames both the coalition and humanity for what happened to her people." He pulled up intelligence reports showing that the escaped Vashati had been systematically targeting coalition installations while disguised as humans. "She wants the galaxy to destroy itself in a war based on mutual hatred and deception." As they prepared to leave the research facility with evidence that could expose the conspiracy, Tae-ho realized they were now facing enemies on multiple fronts. The coalition leadership would do anything to prevent their crimes from being revealed, while Kessa Andra was actively working to ensure that the truth came out only after humanity had been destroyed in retaliation for attacks they had not committed. The sound of approaching ships made everyone freeze as proximity alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Through the laboratory windows, they could see coalition military vessels dropping out of hyperspace and moving toward the planet's surface. Admiral Vextar had arrived with enough firepower to destroy the research base and everyone inside it. "They are here to eliminate all evidence of Operation Mirror," Minho said while frantically copying files to portable storage devices. "The ruling council has decided that the risk of exposure is too great, and they are going to sterilize this entire facility." Tejo knew they had minutes at most before coalition forces would storm the base and kill everyone inside to protect their secrets. The evidence they had collected could save humanity from 30 years of unjust punishment, but only if they could escape with it and get the information to people who would listen to the truth. The coalition ships were landing around the research facility as Tai-Ho and his team ran through the corridors toward the emergency exit that Minho had shown them on the facility schematics. Behind them, they could hear the sounds of armored troops breaching the main entrance and beginning their systematic sweep through the laboratories to eliminate any witnesses who might have discovered the truth about Operation Mirror. Hyojin had rigged the facility's power core to overload, which would destroy most of the evidence but also buy them precious time to reach their ship. The explosion would look like an accident caused by neglected maintenance systems rather than a deliberate attempt to cover up war crimes. "We have maybe 10 minutes before this whole place goes up," she warned while checking the timer on her sabotage device. Sojin was carrying storage devices containing terabytes of data about the Vashati experiments and the false flag operations that had been blamed on humanity over the past 30 years. The files included video evidence of coalition scientists torturing innocent beings and detailed records of how enhanced shapeshifters had been deployed to impersonate various species during staged attacks. "This information could change everything," she said while clutching the devices against her chest. "But only if we can get it back to Earth alive." They reached their ship just as coalition troops were surrounding the facility and preparing to storm the building. Dongwu provided covering fire while the others scrambled aboard and began emergency launch procedures that would get them airborne before the enemy could deploy anti-aircraft weapons. Tejo felt the familiar weight of gravity as their engines fired and lifted them away from the dark planet's surface. "3 coalition cruisers are moving to intercept us," reported their communications officer as enemy ships changed course to block their escape route. "They are ordering us to surrender and prepare to be boarded." Tejo knew that surrendering would mean death for his entire crew and the destruction of evidence that could save billions of innocent people from a war based on lies. "Plot a course for Earth at maximum speed," he ordered while settling into his command chair. "We are going to run and hope our engines are faster than their weapons." The chase began as soon as they cleared the planet's gravity well and jumped to faster than light travel. Coalition ships were generally more advanced than human vessels, but Taiho's patrol ship had been modified with experimental engines that Hyojin had been testing without official approval. The illegal modifications might give them enough speed to stay ahead of their pursuers long enough to reach human space. During the long journey back to Earth, the crew worked frantically to analyze the evidence they had collected and prepare it for transmission to government officials who might actually listen to their story. Sojin discovered that several human colonies which had supposedly committed atrocities against coalition citizens were actually Vashiti settlements that had been established in secret and then destroyed to create false evidence against humanity. The Tausedi massacre that killed 300 coalition diplomats was staged using a fake human colony populated entirely by shapeshifters, she explained while showing Tejo the genetic analysis data. The real human settlement was evacuated weeks before the attack and relocated to a system outside coalition space. Hyojin found evidence in the facility's communication logs that showed how the conspiracy had been coordinated across dozens of research stations and military installations throughout coalition territory. This operation involved thousands of people at the highest levels of their government, she reported. Admiral Vextar was one of the primary architects, and he has been planning humanity's destruction for over 20 years. Meanwhile, on Earth, Ambassador Jaewon was facing increasing pressure from coalition forces who were demanding that humanity surrender several key colonies as punishment for recent attacks that had been blamed on human separatist groups. The coalition claimed to have video evidence of human ships destroying civilian targets, but Jaewon had always suspected that something about their accusations did not add up correctly. When Jaewon received Tae-ho's first encrypted transmission, containing preliminary evidence from the research facility, he immediately began reaching out to potential allies within the galactic community. The Talnari had been experiencing similar problems with false accusations and mysterious attacks that seemed designed to turn other species against them. The Zerion Collective had also noticed inconsistencies in coalition reports about various incidents involving their merchant vessels. "The pattern is becoming clear," Jaewon explained during an emergency session with Earth's military leadership. "The coalition has been systematically eliminating or isolating any species that might challenge their authority." He displayed intelligence reports showing how various civilizations had been targeted for destruction after refusing to submit completely to coalition control. As Tae-ho's ship raced through hyperspace toward Earth, they were joined by vessels from the Talnari fleet and Zerion defense forces who had been convinced by the preliminary evidence to risk everything on exposing the truth. The three species had formed an unlikely alliance based on their shared realization that the coalition had been manipulating them all for decades. The final approach to Earth's solar system became a running battle as more coalition ships joined the pursuit and began firing on the fleeing vessels. Tae-ho watched his shields drop dangerously low as enemy weapons pounded his ship, while Hyo-jin pushed their engines beyond safe operating limits in a desperate attempt to reach friendly territory. Before their systems failed completely, Coalition fleet dropping out of hyperspace around Jupiter announced their sensor operator as dozens of enemy warships appeared on the tactical display. They are moving to surround the entire solar system. Admiral Vextar had decided to end the threat once and for all by launching a full-scale invasion of human space before the evidence of Operation Mirror could be made public. His forces included enough firepower to destroy Earth's orbital defenses and occupy the planet within hours if humanity could not mount an effective resistance. But Earth was not defenseless, and Admiral Park Yoon-seo had been preparing for this moment ever since the coalition had first begun making threats against human colonies. She commanded a fleet of warships that had been hidden in the outer solar system and equipped with weapons developed in secret during 30 years of forced isolation from galactic technology. "All ships prepare for engagement," Yoon-seo ordered, as her fleet moved to intercept the coalition invasion force. "Today we find out whether 30 years of being treated like criminals has made us strong enough to fight for our freedom." As the battle began around Earth's moon, Tae-ho realized that his small patrol ship was carrying the key to ending decades of deception and preventing a war that would destroy countless innocent lives. Sojin had finished compiling the evidence into a comprehensive data package that could be broadcast across the galaxy on all communication frequencies to expose the truth about Operation Mirror. The question now was whether they could survive long enough to transmit the information before coalition forces destroyed them and buried the evidence forever. Outside his ship's windows, Tae-ho could see the flashes of weapons fire as two civilizations prepared to fight a war that should never have started in the first place. The space around Earth had become a battlefield as coalition and human fleets exchanged devastating volleys of weapons fire that lit up the darkness between planets, with explosions visible from the surface. Tae-ho watched through his ship's damaged viewports as Admiral Yoon-seo's hidden fleet engaged Admiral Vextar's invasion force in a desperate attempt to prevent the destruction of humanity's homeworld. His patrol vessel was barely holding together after the long chase from the research facility and multiple hits from coalition weapons during their approach to Earth. Hyo-jin was working frantically to keep their communication systems operational long enough to broadcast Sojin's evidence package to every inhabited world in the galaxy. "I can give you maybe 5 minutes of full-power transmission before our systems fail completely," she warned, while rerouting power from life support to boost their signal strength. Sojin had spent the entire journey preparing a comprehensive data package that included video evidence of the Vashati experiments, records of false flag operations, and proof that the Proxima Centauri incident had been completely fabricated by Coalition scientists. This broadcast will reach over 3,000 worlds simultaneously, she explained while making final adjustments to the transmission protocols. Every species in the galaxy will see the truth about Operation Mirror, the battle raging around them was unlike anything in recorded human history, as two advanced civilizations committed everything they had to a conflict that would determine the fate of billions of innocent people. Earth's orbital defense platforms were holding their ground against the Coalition assault, but Taeho could see that humanity's forces were gradually being overwhelmed by superior numbers and technology. General Oh Sung-min was coordinating ground defenses from his command center beneath Seoul while watching enemy dropships begin landing on Earth's surface in preparation for a full planetary invasion. His forces had been preparing for this moment for 30 years, but they were facing an enemy with weapons and tactics far beyond anything humanity had encountered before. All units maintain defensive positions, he ordered, as Coalition troops began establishing beachheads on every continent. Ambassador Jae-won was broadcasting diplomatic messages to every neutral species in the galaxy, pleading for them to intervene before the conflict escalated into a war that would consume entire star systems. The Talnari and Zarian forces that had joined humanity's cause were fighting bravely, but they were vastly outnumbered by Coalition fleets that seemed to have been prepared for this invasion for years. As Tai-ho prepared to begin transmitting the evidence that could end the war, he received an unexpected communication from Admiral Vextar's flagship, offering him one final chance to surrender before the Coalition destroyed his ship. Captain Yoon, you have caused considerable trouble, but we are prepared to offer you and your crew safe passage in exchange for destroying the stolen data files, the alien commander said in perfect human language. Taeho responded by targeting the Coalition flagship with his ship's emergency beacon and beginning the broadcast that would change galactic history forever. This is Captain Yoon Taeho of the Earth Space Navy, he announced on all frequencies while Sojin's evidence package began transmitting across the galaxy. For 30 years, humanity has been punished for crimes we did not commit, and today the EUI truth will finally be revealed. The broadcast reached Coalition member worlds just as their populations were being told that humanity had to be destroyed to protect galactic civilization from a dangerous and warlike species. Instead, they saw video evidence of their own government conducting illegal experiments on helpless prisoners and fabricating attacks designed to frame innocent civilizations for crimes they had never committed. On the Coalition flagship Admiral, Vextar watched in horror as his carefully constructed deception began collapsing in real time. Billions of beings across the galaxy were seeing proof that their trusted leaders had been manipulating them for decades and using their fear to justify wars of conquest against peaceful species. Cut all communication channels, he ordered desperately. Do not let this transmission reach any more worlds. But it was too late because the evidence was already spreading through every communication network in known space, and Coalition member species were beginning to demand answers from their representatives. The hegemony of Arcturus immediately withdrew their support for the invasion, while the Centauri Republic announced that they would no longer recognize Coalition authority over military operations. The most dramatic moment came when Cassandra revealed herself aboard Admiral Vextar's flagship, where she had been impersonating one of his senior officers for months. The surviving Vashiti appeared on the main bridge in her true form and began broadcasting her own evidence of Coalition war crimes that she had been collecting during her infiltration mission. My people were not extinct as your leaders claimed, Cassandra announced while displaying genetic records that proved thousands of Vashiti had survived the destruction of their homeworld.
We have been living among you for 50 years, documenting your crimes and waiting for the right moment to reveal the truth about Coalition brutality. She explained that the Vashiti had originally planned to destroy the Coalition from within by
turning member species against each other through false flag attacks. But we realized that revenge through deception would make us no better than our oppressors, she said while showing footage of Coalition forces murdering Vashiti civilians during the supposed mining accident that had destroyed their world. Kindor. Revelation that shape-shifting aliens had been infiltrating Coalition leadership for decades sent shockwaves through the invasion fleet as officers began questioning orders and demanding to know which of their colleagues might be imposters. Several ships broke formation and refused to continue attacking Earth while their crews processed the implications of what they were learning. Admiral Vextar made one final desperate attempt to salvage his mission by ordering all Coalition forces to destroy Earth before the evidence could spread further, but his own officers arrested him for war crimes. "The invasion is over," announced his replacement while ordering the fleet to stand down. "All ships return to your home systems immediately." The space battle ended as quickly as it had begun, when Coalition forces found themselves facing not just human defenders, but also fleets from dozens of member species who had realized they had been manipulated into supporting an unjust war. Earth's orbital defenses had held long enough for the truth to spread across the galaxy and turn public opinion against the conspiracy. In the aftermath of the failed invasion, Taiho found himself promoted to admiral and placed in command of humanity's first contribution to a reformed galactic alliance based on transparency and mutual cooperation. The coalition collapsed within months as member species demanded new leadership and established oversight committees to prevent similar deceptions in the future. So Jin became the director of the galaxy's first independent war crimes tribunal, with a mandate to investigate decades of false flag operations and bring the architects of Operation Mirror to justice. Her work led to the exposure of 12 similar research facilities and the rescue of hundreds of Vashati who had been held prisoner for years. Andra was given a new homeworld for her people along with guarantees that the Vashati would be protected from future persecution. She chose to work with the War Crimes Tribunal to help identify other victims of coalition brutality and ensure that the galaxy learned from its mistakes. 5 years after the failed invasion, Earth had become the center of a new galactic community built on principles of honesty and mutual respect, rather than fear and domination. Humanity's 30 years of isolation had taught them valuable lessons about independence and self-reliance that proved essential in creating a more just civilization. The universe had learned that the price of blind trust in authority was measured in the suffering of innocent beings, and that sometimes the courage to seek truth was the only thing standing between civilization and the darkness of unchecked power.